The monsoon session is a washout is actually an understatement. The session wrapped up 2 days earlier, and in the Lok Sabha productivity was 22 days. It functioned for just 21 hours in all. In the Rajya Sabha productivity was 23 days and also functioned for about 21.9 hours overall. So what really happened? From the get-go, there was ruckus from the opposition. They wanted to discuss, among other things, the Pegasus issue, which came about. The story broke on the first day of the session, in fact, and some of the ministers of the Modi government called it a conspiracy, saying that look at the timing. They wanted to discuss farm laws. The government said, okay, we're willing to discuss, but at least come and let the parliament function in the first place. The opposition, on the other hand, feels that a lot of bills were rushed, things were not talked about properly. Was there enough of a response on COVID crisis? Remember, this was the session which took place after the deadly second wave. Did we talk about it? Did we talk about inflation? Did we talk about high prices? Did we talk about how we would prepare for a third wave enough? And should we actually have talked about Pegasus and farm laws? This is some of the questions that need to be asked today, as all of our lawmakers on the Treasury side as well as the opposition benches seem to have let us down. But before that, let's just take you some of the voices which came in today. Venkaiah Naidu, the Rajya Sabha chairman, was particularly emotional in his farewell speech.
It has been happening as a routine for some time. I am distressed by the way this sacredness was destroyed yesterday, when some members sat on the table, some others climbed on the table of the House, perhaps to be more visible in such acts of sacrilege. I have no words to convey my anguish and to condemn such acts. As I spent a sleepless night, last night, I struggled to find out the provocation or reason for forcing this august House to hit such a low yesterday.
करोड़ों रुपया खर्च होता है संसद की कार्रवाई के लिए। जब हमारे नियम प्रक्रिया में भी है कि बेल में ना आना, तख्ती न लगाना, नारेबाजी न लगाना, और ये अपेक्षाएं हम सभी मान्य सदस्यों से करते हैं, सभी दलों के नेताओं से करते हैं कि वो अपनी बात को रखें, लेकिन सदन में तख्तियां, नारेबाजी ये संसदीय परंपराओं के अनुरूप नहीं है, संसद की मर्यादाओं के अनुरूप नहीं है।
हम बार बार कहते थे कि हमारे जो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, हम जो बात रख रहे हैं, ये देशवासियों को दिखाया जाए। अगर सरकार कुछ फैसला करेगा कि कौन सा जायज है, नाजायज है, तो बड़ा मुश्किल होगा। ये देखना सरकार की जिम्मेदारी नहीं है। इस तरीके की मनमानी की सरकार हमारे देश के लिए आज हम सबको और खासकर हमारे लोकतंत्र के लिए खतरा बनते जा रहे हैं।
This is a completely insensitive government. For the last 9 months, the farmers of Punjab, Haryana and Western UP are sitting on the borders of Delhi in thousands, and more than 500 people have lost their lives. They're sitting with their children, they're sitting with the old women over there, and this government has stopped any kind of dialogue with them. And it is our bunyadi hamara hak hai. It is the constitution provides us that members of parliament have to be listened to. The house was adjourned at that time. The house was not in order. Okay. It was adjourned. I went to the table and I threw the rule book on an empty chair. There was nobody sitting on the chair. It was a symbolic gesture.
Manisha Priyam and Sanjeev Srivastava joining us to understand what's going on. Manisha ji, there are two narratives right now with what has happened in this parliament session. One narrative is that look at the opposition. No limits, no decorum, climbing on tables, snatching papers, heckling, ministers while they're trying to speak. and just making a noise, not letting Parliament function. The other narrative is that look at this government with a brute majority passing bills without adequate discussion, not letting opposition members keep their matters in front of the people, and really throttling democracy. Which side do you think has won the narrative? Manisha ji, can you hear me? Let me see if I can go across to Sanjeev Srivastava. Sanjeev, can you hear me? All right, I seem to have a poor connection, but just to put this in perspective for our viewers, the monsoon session was a particularly crucial one. There are so many issues that our lawmakers need to discuss. They are, after all, our elected representatives. There are so many issues that taxpayers are funding them to discuss. Crores of money spent on having a parliament session functioning in the first place, especially after the deadly second wave of COVID-19. Was enough done on this? Let's try and go across to Manisha Priyam now and see if we can hear her. Manisha ji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very much so. Please go ahead.
I'm not sure if you heard my question. My question to you is, who do you think is at fault here? The opposition says that the government has not let them speak, has not brought up important issues like Pegasus and farm laws. The Treasury bench says that the opposition has crossed all limits in misbehavior with the ruckus in Parliament.
So at this point of time, the opposition is certainly on a momentum of popular emotions. Especially if you put everything together, the West Bengal elections have come as a setback to the ruling BJP. And what best can the opposition do except to beat the drum of its state election victories? Because they've not been able to get to the majority mark in the parliament. So every state election victory is something that the opposition tries to notch up. But this time around, the parliament has been held in unusual circumstances. And I think whether we like it or not, it is the robustness of Indian democracy that shows you that parties will bring issues to the parliament, whether they are in a majority or not. COVID second wave was a deadly killer. Farmers have been sitting out for dharnas for a long time now. Economic issues are at the forefront. And therefore, the clear underlining to the government in the past 2 years of COVID is that not just economic performance, the lives of the most vulnerable are very important. And if you see, the government has also responded, whether it's the Kisan Samman Nidhi or the Ujjwala, these are government's ways of response to reaching out directly to the most vulnerable and needy. Therefore, in the parliament, the opposition, yes, it's been able to raise the issues. Pegasus, more than any other, requires investigation. It should be investigated. I believe, if I am correct, it is being investigated even in Israel. There has been a change of government in Israel. Now, those kind of things do come at a disadvantage. If the government has nothing to hide, all that it needs to do is to come clean. Now, whether the opposition is able to mount that pressure on the government or not is really now for the opposition floor strategy coordination. And remember, today Mr. Modi may be seen as responding to the opposition, but tomorrow he can drum up his numbers to his side and he can show that he's larger than the sum of many state and regional alliances plus the Congress party put together. So it may be Modi's strategy to put the opposition together, and then in the second round, you can see another game. So don't call it final days yet. I'm happy that issues have come to the fore in India's democracy, but the political game is still open. This may be Mr. Modi's way of saying that you regional parties are aligned with the Congress, and then he can take the battle on from thereafter. As far as I see, the government has taken its largesse to the poorer sections of the population. Days to come will tell us whether this strategy is flowering or not.
Sanjeev, In terms of narrative, do you think that the opposition has got the momentum right now, because they try to raise those issues and outside Parliament? And at the end of the day, should Parliament then merely be reduced to a platform for the opposition to show its strength and the Treasury to show its strength? What about the job of actually passing laws?
You need two hands to clap. So I won't say that it's entirely the government's fault or opposition's fault, but certain things are unpardonable. The kind of behavior one is seeing from opposition, some of its MPs standing on a table or throwing papers or tearing away papers, that's not done, and it should not be condoned and it should not be encouraged. Having said that, who is responsible? It's the government's job. When the BJP was in opposition, they always stalled Parliament, and that is the prerogative of the opposition, to stall Parliament as much as to allow business to continue, because they will use a tactic as it suits them at a particular time. Right now, the opposition's demand for a discussion on Pegasus is not being met even halfway by the government. They are not allowing a discussion. So the opposition, having smelled blood, and this is also the first session after I think amongst the first ones after 2014, that the opposition ranks have come together. There is, you are seeing, except for the odd BSP, all other parties have kind of pulled in and thrown in their weight behind the opposition. And look at Kapil Sibal's dinner, even the so-called neutral parties like BJD and Jagan Reddy's party was represented there. So the opposition is smelling blood. It is on a roll, like Manisha was saying, and it is part of their tactics to disrupt Parliament. What should not be part of tactics is to do it in such a, disgraceful manner, if you may. But the government needs to ensure that it conducts business. The government needs to ensure that it takes opposition leaders into confidence. The government needs to reach out. It is the government's job. They are running the country. Opposition is not running the country. And also the other issues, the manner in which Parliament is being underlined. Look at the number of bills which are going to select committee and standing committee. Their numbers have gone down. There is no meaningful discussion happening in parliamentary committees. Look at how the IT committee was virtually sabotaged, in a manner of speaking, by BJP members being present but not signing up and not allowing the quorum to happen so that the IT committee could meet and raise issues about Pegasus. The officials did not turn up for that meeting. So the Parliament is being undermined. If the opposition is undermining it, the government is equally hand in glove in undermining the Parliament. Because it, like I said in the beginning, you need two hands to clap.
That brings me back to the point. Manisha Priyam, that brings me back to the point that is it fair to use Parliament as a battleground to settle scores? Because that's exactly what seems to be happening. The government has been pushing bills, and it has been doing this for some time now because it just has the numbers in Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha. So it's been rushing through the bills that it feels it needs to push through. Very important decision on retrospective tax. That amendment was made. The OBC bill, they managed to get everyone together on that. So they're managing to get their way. Meanwhile, the opposition, like Sanjeev and you also said, is smelling blood. My question is it fair to use Parliament as the Maidan for that jung?
No, the Parliament is a forum for legislation. All the bills that you say are very important pieces of legislation. The government has been able to pull it through, notwithstanding all the din and the hullabaloo. Now, as far as the opposition is concerned, what other strategy do you think they have? Their strategies are largely strategies outside the Parliament. So their best way is to combine a bit of outside the Parliament, dharna, blockade, etc., and get the optics, get the space, as if they have got a lot of voice and the people are with them. The opposition has to do something. Where does it do it? Parliament is not the place because they don't have the numbers. So they will, by definition, by deductive logic, they will spill out of the parliamentary space and do this. And they have spilled out, especially if you see the West Bengal elections were very verbose, very noisy. And you had the Honorable Prime Minister and the Home Minister leading from the front. So is the opposition going to leave this opportunity? No. what is the biggest thing that has happened? You've had a chief minister coming down. She's met, Sonia Gandhi. She's met. Now, where does this lead the opposition to? Almost.
I think I've lost her line again. Yeah, I think I've lost her line again. But that's a important sentence that she ended on before the audio dropped. Sanjeev, where does all of this lead to? So the opposition has finally got something to band together on, and opposition unity at best in the last 6-7 years has been extremely fragile. Blown open very easily, almost like child's play. So can they stick together, and what does this eventually lead to?
The issue is we really don't know, and we can't even begin to predict what's going to happen in 2024. Even if the fragile opposition unity turns into a firm opposition unity, does it still throw up a credible alternative to Narendra Modi, who seems to be still having a pulse on the popular mood as far as the national mood is concerned? But his difficulty or tragedy is that while he overrides in everything and everybody on the national scene, in state elections his persona comes a cropper. He is not able to pull his weight and get a state election victory just on his charisma and his name. So that is the dichotomy, and that is the beauty of the Indian parliamentary system right now, the federal system, that you may have states and center pulling in different directions in terms of electoral outcomes. What happens in 2024? Will all the opposition parties stay together? Will they fall apart in the run-up to that? Much will depend perhaps on how election results shape out next year, when from UP, beginning from UP, Punjab, then in 2023 you will have states like Rajasthan, MP, Chhattisgarh, all those important states coming up in the run-up to 2024. So much water is to be flown down the Ganges, like they say, between now and then. But clearly, the juggernaut of BJP seems to be being quite robustly challenged by the opposition. And one point which I would like to make, Tamanna, that you're saying, should Parliament be used as a battleground or as a munch or as a forum to settle political scores? Yes, Parliament is a forum for parliamentary democracy. So its function is not just to legislate. Its function is to also let the opposition and treasury benches spar with each other. And so that's what we are seeing. And some unfortunate spectacle is playing out. That's unfortunate. But, well, again, it's the government's job to make sure that Parliament functions more than the opposition's.
Yeah, so this was a fight. Who actually won this round? Was it the government or was it the opposition? Did the government manage to pass the bills that they absolutely wanted to? Probably yes. Did the opposition manage to put on display a show of strength? Yes. So maybe both sides got what they wanted. Did we, the Indian people, get what we wanted? Perhaps not. And that's really the question I think we should leave this with. Thank you so much, Manisha Priyam and Sanjeev Srivastava, for joining us today. That's all the time we have on the India development debate, but we'll be back tomorrow with all the stories and the analysis that matter to you.